Beto O'Rourke, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Why should Texans hire you as governor?
Our current governor has failed us. Can't fix the grid, can't keep the lights on, can't reduce the inflation that we're seeing in our property taxes and our utility bills, can't keep our kids safe in school. We're 11 weeks and counting from Uvalde, and he has yet to make a single change to protect kids or teachers for that matter. Unable to fix our education system that is losing teachers by the thousands. As you saw here today in Johnson County in Cleburne, Texas, we're bringing people together to fix these things, to make sure that we have a grid that's connected to ERCOT, that is fully winterized and weatherized. We're going to go after those illegal profits that were stolen from us and return it to the ratepayer. We're going to bring property taxes down by expanding Medicaid, ensuring everybody can see a doctor while also reducing the burden on homeowners and renters. And we're going to get behind those public school teachers and make sure they're paid enough not to work a second or third job, treated with the respect that keeps them in the classroom and keeps a focus on our kids. We do that and ensure that our rights are protected, like the rights of women to make their own decisions about their own body, the rights of Texans to marry the person of their choice. We're going to be back on the right track in this state. But a majority of our fellow Texans think we're on the wrong track today. The only way to fix that is to win this election.
I wanted to ask you about jobs and the economy in Texas. The Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas said recently that Texas will add nearly 600,000 jobs this year, and employment will reach 13.7 million this December. Companies, as you know, keep relocating to Texas, many of them to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. My question is, why should voters make a change in the middle of all this?
Imagine what we could do in terms of attracting employers or creating more jobs if we didn't have a total ban on abortion in Texas with no exception for rape or incest. It's really hard to attract and retain the talent when people feel under attack, or they feel attacked because their kid is trans, or because the legislature is introducing a Don't Say Gay bill. This politics of fear and hatred compromises the economic success that was built by businesses, entrepreneurs, and the workers within them. I also want to make sure that we have higher paid jobs. I just was listening to a school teacher here in Cleburne. She told me she's working 3 jobs this summer to be able to afford to be a teacher. Her average payment on her home has gone up $700 a month, and that's on top of every other inflation that she's seeing in her life right now. So higher paying jobs that add more value in our communities, that treat the people who work them with the respect that they deserve, that allows us to grow this economy even more and ensure that more people can do well and afford to just work one job instead of 2 or 3.
When you look at a number of the recent polls here in Texas in the governor's race, it shows that Governor Abbott is leading by between 5 and 8 percentage points. What is your path to victory?
We've got to continue to bring Republicans, independents, and Democrats together. It's the only way to win, and it's the right way to govern. I don't want to deliver as governor for Democrats or independents or Republicans. I want to deliver for all of us. So building this coalition now in this campaign, we saw them here today in Johnson County. We saw them Sunday in Waxahachie. We're bringing people over who feel that Greg Abbott is too radical, too extreme, or just too incompetent on issues like the grid or his inability to reduce inflation. They want us to turn the page. For whatever reason, he is unwilling or unable to make the changes that we need. They're looking for someone who can. So that's the coalition that will win this election, but it's also the coalition that will ensure that we can get these big things done, whether it's attracting more employers and better paying jobs, improving our schools for our kids most importantly, but also the teachers who are leaving by the thousands, or doing common sense bipartisan things like expanding Medicaid or legalizing cannabis in this state. We only get that done when we bring everyone together. Too many years of division and polarization, time that we focus on community and bringing everybody to the table.
As you know, it's back to school. School security is top of mind for a lot of parents right now. And my colleagues recently interviewed some of the survivors back at Santa Fe High School, a substitute teacher who was shot and thankfully survived, a student who was shot and thankfully survived. And one thing that they told us was that the state laws that were passed by the legislature in 2019 didn't go far enough in making sure that there was teeth and that the school districts had to comply with these safety standards. If you're elected, what will you do to make sure that the school districts follow law and comply?
I'm going to listen to and follow the lead of those parents and educators and former students at Santa Fe High School, the parents and educators and students in Uvalde. They've told us what we need to do to keep kids safe going forward. Raise the minimum age of purchase, for example, of an AR-15 to at least 21 years old. Have a red flag law so that if someone is threatening to use a firearm they own against students in that classroom, that we intervene before it's too late. Implement a universal background check. We have one at gun stores today, but you can buy from a private seller without a background check. We do those things, we will be able to prevent more of these massacres and tragedies and get back to the common sense, responsible gun ownership that we've always had in the state of Texas. Greg Abbott has taken us off course through his fealty to the NRA, passing permitless carry over the objections of law enforcement, police chiefs, and sheriffs that now allows anyone to carry a loaded gun on our streets without any kind of background check, vetting, or training whatsoever, has predictably caused an increase in gun violence. And we now have more law enforcement who've been gunned down in the state of Texas than any other state in the union. So let's get back to defending the Second Amendment while protecting the lives of the people in our communities, especially our kids in school.
You will, if you're elected, you will likely have a Republican legislature. We've talked about this before, and so I'm wondering, how do you pass that? And if you can't, have you looked at other options?
I've listened to people across the state of Texas. I've spent the last 3 weeks in some of the most rural, Republican represented counties that there are in this state. And I've listened to gun owners and non-gun owners, Republicans and Democrats. We have common ground on a universal background check, on raising the minimum age of purchase, on a red flag law. In fact, as polled, the vast majority of Texans support those measures. We've just lacked a leader in office who can bring everyone together to the table, Republicans and Democrats, and hammer out the consensus, compromise where necessary if we have to, but do something better than what we have today. Those parents in Uvalde, 11 weeks after their kids were taken from them, are demanding action right now. And I want to make sure that we deliver for them and parents across the state who expect us to protect their kids in those classrooms.
When you talk about Uvalde, and I don't know if you had a chance to read the House investigative report, but there were problems with an unlocked door, a classroom door, the keys, there were questions over that. We saw the same thing at Santa Fe. And so that's why I want to go back to my question. How will you persuade Texans that if you were elected, that you will make sure that these school districts are following the law?
School districts have to make sure that their number one priority is the safety of those students, of those educators, of the support staff, those parents who are dropping off and picking up their kids each and every day. We've got to hold superintendents, trustees, principals, everyone involved accountable to make sure that that safety is to the greatest degree possible guaranteed. But if we do not complement that with reforms that address how easily an 18-year-old could walk into a gun store just outside of Uvalde and buy 2 AR-15s and hundreds of rounds of ammunition, that he could be sending so many signals to so many people that he intended to use that against others, that his friends called him the school shooter before he ever entered that school and shot anybody, then we'll be missing the greatest opportunity to save the greatest number of lives. So yes, it means strengthening the security at our schools, holding people accountable, improving our gun laws to protect the Second Amendment and protect the lives of our kids. And then the governor's talked about mental health. We're 51st in the nation in mental health care access today. The month before Uvalde, he took out $211 million from the state's mental health care budget. Let's fully fund mental health care in Texas as well. Let's do everything, in other words, to make sure that the only thing our kids are worried about is making sure they get their homework in on time, that they're able to rise to the top of their class and achieve to their heart's potential over the course of their lives, not worried about being gunned down in their own classrooms.
I wanted to ask you, I wanted to show you actually a map that my colleagues came up with, and this is when talking about mental health. and how much mental health services are available to students across the state. And green, which there's not much of, is adequate health care services. Blue is where there's telehealth programs. Red is where there's no access at all. And orange is where it's inadequate. And this came from state data that my colleagues put together as a map. When you see that map, what's your reaction?
That map reflects everything I've been hearing across the state. And one of those orange areas is in Lufkin, Texas. And we were just there. And I remember a woman raising her hand at a previous town hall and saying, my brother gets arrested on purpose to be taken to the county jail because he's uninsured, we haven't expanded Medicaid, and his schizophrenia untreated produces so much suffering, this is his only option. Today, in most of those counties, the number one provider of mental health care services is the county jail system. If we just took yes for an answer and expanded Medicaid and brought in $10 billion of our own federal income taxes back to the state of Texas, we could provide access for mental health care in these underserved communities. We could supplement that with additional state spending and make sure that people are healthy enough and well enough to go to work, raise their families, finish their education. And we could also make sure that we save the taxpayer the cost of incarcerating somebody today who has no other option but to go to jail in order to get that help. It's the most economical, most effective, most efficient way to deliver those services, and it brings back $10 billion a year, which will also reduce our property taxes in Dallas County and every other one of the 253 counties in Texas.
I did have one other question. I appreciate your time.
Yeah.
You talk about fixing the grid. You talk about people paying more for their electricity. My question to you is, how will you lower bills? And there hasn't been a determination yet that there was fraud. I know that the federal government is still looking into that. So how will you lower bills, and how specifically will you fix the grid?
Yeah, there's a state statute on the books that disallows price gouging in the time of a declared emergency or disaster like the one we had last February when Governor Abbott could not keep the lights on and the power running. He chose, it was his order to peg the price of electricity at its highest allowable rate. Gas began to trade at 200 times its going rate. Pipeline companies, energy traders made $11 billion in illegal profits. All of us are having to pay that back through higher utility bills right now. The only winner at the end of the day was Greg Abbott, who got millions of dollars from the people who made billions of dollars off of all of us. As governor, I'm going to go back and get those $11 billion and return them to the ratepayer to reduce our expenses. If necessary, we'll use some of the state surplus, some of the rainy day fund to reduce the burden of inflation in the state of Texas, including on our utility bills. And we're also going to invest in weatherizing buildings like this one, our homes and our schools, so that they're drawing down less power, reducing the bills that we're having to pay. We do that and fix the grid by weatherizing and winterizing every aspect of it, connecting ERCOT to the national grid, having an independent market monitor so that gas can't trade at 200 times its going rate again. And we're going to have a first world electricity grid, which is what we deserve as the greatest state in the greatest country on the planet.
Beto O'Rourke, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Jack.